Congressman Seth Moulton, I presume this is not your office, right?
Not my office.
Not your
Not my
office.
office.
You are at home, correct?
I'm at home. This is the living room of a house that we're supposed to be leaving soon. We were supposed to move on Monday, so the rest of the room is boxes. But life's kind of on hold for everybody
Yes,
right now.
curveballs. Well, thanks so much for folks who are tuning in. Welcome to Manny's Super Civic Cyber Conversations. This is our opportunity to continue to civically engage the public around the country in a time of need using the internet. So today we are so honored to be joined by Congressman Seth Moulton, who is an amazing member of Congress from Massachusetts and has been to Manny's before and has been taking the lead and has been really early on in a lot of the COVID-19 prep stuff that Congress is doing. A couple housekeeping stuff. If you have a question, you can type it in the Q&A box. We'll be getting to questions in about 15, 20 minutes. This whole thing is 30 minutes long. And we have disabled chat, but we'll be sending you all a link after the fact to become a sponsor of Manny's. It's $36 a month and we could really use the help and support. Congressman Seth Moulton. Okay, I've got so many questions for you, but the first question I have for you is how you're feeling, because I know that you had some symptoms of COVID-19 and you were nervous you may have had it, but you didn't test positive, or maybe did you test positive, or how's your health right now?
No. So actually, both my wife and I are symptomatic for COVID-19 or have been. We need all the sort of, every sort of online test you take or whatever, but there aren't enough tests in Massachusetts. So we were not able to get tested. So the doctors have said we have it, but we can't actually confirm that through a laboratory.
Gosh. And can you tell me about the moment when when you started developing those symptoms and your doctor told you had it? Like, how scary was that? What went through your mind? Kind of what was that emotional process like?
Well, so you want the full story?
Yeah, I definitely want the whole story.
So I knew I was sort of likely to get exposed. I mean, because I just spent so much time traveling around. As much as we've been ahead of this and really trying to use social distancing measures way before, governments were talking about them. I started feeling under the weather for a while, and then all of a sudden my chest started getting tight. And it was chest tightness like I've never felt before. And this obviously concerned me that it would be coronavirus. But this is a stressful time, and I've got an 18-month-old daughter at home, and my wife, and we're all living together. Usually that like happens like 24 hours a week. And so it's obviously a big change. And frankly, I didn't want to stress Liz out. So what I decided to do is totally keep it to myself. I was kind of having fevers, chills, and chest tightness. But I said, look, I'm just going to wait until the doctor can order me a test. And then if it's positive, like, we'll just go from there.
Yeah.
Instead, the doctor's like, yeah, you're definitely symptomatic for this disease, but we don't have enough tests, and we're not going to waste one on someone who seems to have a relatively minor case, because you're not going to need to come into the hospital. And so then I had to say, okay, yeah, actually I've been feeling pretty bad for the last couple of days. Mm-hmm. And she has very similar symptoms, but more mild.
Got it. And has it all cleared up now for you?
Yes, actually. So about a week ago, I tried going on a run. That was a total disaster. I could barely breathe. Today, I went on a run and felt 100% back to normal for the first time in like 2 weeks. And so big victory. And, the message I think is it's important for everybody to hear is that statistically, most cases of this disease will be mild. It's not the ones you read about or see on TV, but most of them are going to be mild. You got to take it seriously.
Yeah, absolutely. So tell me about what's going on with Congress right now. Is it in session? Are people working? Is everyone back home? What's going on with Congress?
We're not in session. My team has been working remotely for 3 weeks, but this is a little bit unusual because most offices were not set up to do social distancing at all, or even remote work. This sounds kind of crazy, but you said we've been a little bit ahead of the game as far as Congress. Yes, totally true. The bar's very low. So I think as a federal government, we're still way behind. But about a month ago, when I sort of saw this coming, I asked our tech guy, hey, are we ready to completely work remotely? Yeah. He said, we have like a 50-person team. He said, you need one more iPad because one new guy doesn't have an iPad yet. Otherwise, you're totally ready. I asked him how many other offices are ready. Remember, there are 535 between the House and the Senate. He said 0. So everybody's been struggling to catch up.
Yeah.
but we've been working remotely for a while. And honestly, I mean, my hours are longer than usual because there's just so much to do with this crisis.
So March 13th, I think it was, is when you put out your plan for, it was the coronavirus response plan. Were you I think you were the first congressional office to do that. What
Yeah, so
made you?
what we did is we set up, I mean, we've been doing stuff in it long before that in terms of just informing people about the disease and everything. But what we did on March 13th is we set out this three-level response that would
Yeah.
show how our office would operate, whether it's open or closed, whether, you know, how much staff is working or working from home. And a lot of other offices have copied this. And actually a lot of just other government institutions and even some private sector institutions have copied it. The idea is tell people not only how you're operating today, but as you escalate, what people can expect. And that's something that's been totally missing from the federal government, right?
Yeah.
Trump comes on and all of a sudden, you know, gives, well, there's a new plan today because I've finally started listening to my medical advisors and scientists. And so I'm going to do this, but no one has any idea that this stuff is coming down the pike.
Do you, just on that in particular, do you feel like the president has been reined in, or, you know, is finally kind of getting with the program, or do you feel like he's just a loose cannon and it's going to stay this way until this thing's over? Like, have
I
you
think
lost all faith?
I think literally from like when he started running for president, there's always been moments, hundreds of them at this point, where people say, "Oh, he's finally been reined in," and
Yeah.
it's never been true. And I don't think it's true now. I think that he has moments where he follows the advice of experts because he's scared.
Yeah.
He's obviously a very fearful man.
Yeah.
And then there are other moments where he just resorts to his selfish instincts and is much more worried about the stock market and his buddy's income and his own reelection prospects than saving lives. And look, obviously I don't like Trump. Probably a lot of people on this call don't like Trump.
Yeah.
But just to be clear, the mistakes that he has made in handling this crisis
Yeah.
absolutely cost American lives. And tens of thousands, if not more, Americans will lose their lives because of his failed leadership.
What do you make of the fact that he still has such high approval ratings from his base?
It's frightening. It's a couple of things.
It's
First
like
of all, there's
absurd.
obviously,
Like, don't know
look,
what people are watching. Like, what
right.
are
So
they?
it's kind of like George W. Bush in the middle of the Iraq War, where he had high enough approval ratings to get reelected. It wasn't until the end of his second term that people started to really realize that he'd screwed this up pretty badly. So there's a rally around the flag point. It also just points out that, look, this is not, we don't have this in the bag. Everyone said that as long as the economy is good, Trump will get reelected. Okay, well, the economy's not good, but you know what? This is like the one thing that he can get out there and say, it's not my fault, it's not my fault.
Yeah.
You know? So I think the fall election is going to be tough.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to go to next, which was I'm talking to Biden's campaign. I think I'm talking to Greg Schultz, and then we actually talked to Bernie's campaign as well, because they're still active, and David Plouffe. I talked to David Plouffe earlier this week, and I'm really nervous. I have to tell you, I'm really nervous because I feel like Democrats we're always going to need a very, very, very energetic ground game to win, because Donald Trump's voters will show up. I feel like they don't need a ground game to show up, but our side certainly does, especially after such a bruising primary. And I don't, Joe Biden will likely be our nominee. I am worried about, a huge excited field operation for Joe Biden. And with this, I'm even more worried that people are going to be not going to want to volunteer because they're not going to want to go door to door or gather in field offices. So, are you nervous? And how do you think we win?
Look, I am nervous.
How do we overcome the challenges to win?
Look, I am nervous. I think, look, the Democratic Party looks out for the little guy. We're the ones who are out there supporting those who are less fortunate, who don't have as many opportunities. And guess what? If you don't have as many opportunities in life, it means it's harder to vote. You don't have as many opportunities to vote. Yeah. You can't just pay someone to watch your kids for an hour while you go stand in a line to make sure that you get your voice heard. Yeah. So with whatever's going on, even just bad weather, it hurts Democratic turnout. Yeah. And this is worse than a hurricane. Yeah. So we have a real problem. Obviously, we don't know where we're going to be in the fall. Yeah. My best guess, I'm not an epidemiologist, is that we kind of come out of this in the summer and then there's a second wave in the fall, and that's going to be a real problem for the November election. And don't think for a second that Trump isn't going to try to play games with this.
Right.
Either
Right.
delay the election or do something else. So what do we have to do? I think number
Or
one,
you to suppress the vote by saying, if you like saying maybe don't show up if you don't feel comfortable, kind of thing.
totally, totally. So number one, we've got to show what real leadership is like in this crisis. We've got to provide a counter narrative to what he's doing. I would like to see Joe Biden on TV more. I would like to see him actually saying, "This is the Biden plan. This is what we could be doing."
Yeah.
And then maybe you don't say it now, but after the fact, people can look back and say, "Look, if we had followed Joe Biden's advice,
Right.
this many people would not have died."
Right.
And then you have a real direct comparison.
It's a real opportunity for him to show leadership. Right. Before
Totally.
we get into the stimulus bill and your op-ed and the SOS Act and all that stuff and the Army, I just want to quickly touch base because we hosted you for a little gathering at Manny's when you were running for president, and I wanted to
Yeah.
just kind of ask, like, what was that experience like for you? Are you glad you ran? What did you learn from running for president? Kind of, yeah, just wanted. I haven't seen you since I saw you last when you were a presidential candidate. So how was that experience for you?
Well, first of all, the experience of coming to Manny's was absolutely the highlight of the campaign.
Okay, all right, okay.
Amazing. And come back anytime. So you guys do an incredible job, and the fact that you were willing to join us for dinner afterwards was a special
Uh,
treat. Thank
it was
you.
lovely. It was lovely.
But look, I ran for president because I genuinely think Trump is going to be hard to beat, and I've said that all along. And I didn't think there was a better foil for him than a young combat veteran, and I was the only veteran in the race who'd actually been in combat. And when we're still in the middle of a war, I thought that was an interesting contrast.
Yeah.
Obviously, I got in the race way too late. Got in like 3 months after the other major candidates, and it just so happened a week before Biden got in the race himself. So it was like
Yeah.
the worst timing on earth. But you know what? I'm absolutely glad I went out there and gave it a shot. I think if I'd seen how the race unfolded and I hadn't given it a shot after a lot of people, including former presidents, had encouraged me to get in, and I was proud to do it, then I would have regretted it. It was also an amazing experience because, look, you just meet so many people and you learn so much about this country. And I'm way better at my job now in Congress, which I love, and I'm proud to be serving,
Yeah.
even in this pretty dysfunctional institution. And I'm better at it because I spent time traveling all around the country and talking to an awful lot of great Americans.
Just one more quick question on that. Can you tell me about one particular anecdote that has stuck with you from your experience going around the country and talking to people?
Yeah, my gosh. I mean, there are so
Or
many.
like a place that you went to, or like a state fair you had to go to, or something that you kind of, when you think back to your time, you're like, that was really great. I'm really glad I met that person or I went to that place.
Yeah, I mean, definitely the like pork stick at the Iowa Fair was memorable because that tasted incredible.
Yeah, that's a very non-Jewish thing to do.
But that's fair. That's fair. Sorry, you're missing out. But one thing I remember knocking on the door of someone who I knew he was a veteran because he had a small little Marine Corps sticker out front. And it was in Iowa. He came to the door and he was obviously a little bit visibly frustrated. Probably a lot of people have been knocking on his door.
Yeah.
And he was someone who was just sort of like checked out of the
Yeah.
process. And he quickly made it clear that he didn't really want to talk about politics.
Yeah.
And I just said, just thanks for your service. I'm a Marine too, and Semper Fi.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, it just opened up this conversation that would never have happened otherwise. And just being able to connect on an individual level, doesn't have to be a veteran story, but just being able to connect on an individual level with someone who's done so much for his country. I mean, he fought for this country in the Vietnam War. He came home and people spat on him, and he just was like, "Hey, thanks." And you know what? Actually, I will check that out, and I will go and vote.
Yeah.
And we need to find better ways to just reach people in this country. Ironically, that's something that Trump did. Trump got a lot of voters out who were otherwise checked out of the political process. And you know what? There's a little bit of a lesson to be learned there.
Yeah, he definitely did. Okay, so let's go to this bill. Are you proud of honestly, as a layman, just kind of sitting back and watching it, I was really proud of House Democrats of playing ball and getting more out of that bill and helping more of the average person and more small businesses. And so I guess I just wanted to ask you about how you felt like that process went. One of the largest stimulus bills in modern history, the largest. And kind of what thing was negotiated before that you're most proud of, and what thing was left out that you're most disappointed by?
Well, look, I mean, it is truly $2 trillion. It's like an unbelievable amount of
I
money.
don't even
And
know what that means.
it's like impossible. It's very difficult to comprehend.
Yeah.
But this bill was negotiated in the space of a week by a select group of leaders in Washington. There were no hearings, there was no testimony, there were no expert witnesses. There are a lot of problems with the bill, and people can complain about it a lot. But we came so far from where the Senate Republicans started. I laid out my four priorities. Number one, support those doctors and nurses. They need PPE.
Yeah.
Number two, people who've lost their jobs, working families. Number three, small businesses. And only after those three should we even talk about any sort of like larger industry bailouts.
Yeah.
The Republicans literally started with the exact opposite. They started with corporate bailouts, and they had almost nothing for hospital workers. And it was very clear that even small businesses came before working families. So at the end of the day, in the space of a week, Democrats completely reversed that priority list and got a bill that, while not perfect, absolutely gets help to people where it's needed most and needed first. Even though the number over, I'll give you an example.
Yeah.
The number overall for like larger corporations, 500 billion, is larger than the small business amount, but it's almost all loans, whereas small businesses, there's a lot of grants.
Yeah.
So, people don't know about the Obama recovery. Taxpayers actually made money off of that deal. We should be able to do that again. And the point is, huge sea change from where we started, and it's a pretty good bill. I was proud to support it.
And so the Senate Republicans wrote their horrific bill, and you got the House basically wrote a new version. And then what happened? You were able to get enough Republicans to agree to it, to come to an agreement, or?
Yeah, I mean, this is sort of the only good side of governing by crisis is everyone realized we got to get this across the finish line. So,
Yeah.
We had to come up with something that could get through a Republican Senate and a Democratic House.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a long list of complaints about the bill on my side, right? But almost every one of them is because, well, we couldn't get Senate Republicans if we didn't do this.
Yeah. It's so funny because, when the government wants to act quickly, it can. Right, you can figure out how to spend $2 trillion in a week if in a crisis, obviously. But I've been talking to a lot of local city leaders in San Francisco, and like the city's going to find beds for 8,000 people, unhoused people, right? And the biggest issue in my city, of course, is homelessness. And every conversation kind of ends in a, well, we don't have the room, we don't have the place. And it's unfortunate that a crisis is bringing this to the fore, but it turns out you can find the place if you really, really, you have to.
Absolutely, and this is a large amount of money. Look, fixing the housing crisis in San Francisco, that takes a lot of money, but it's a good investment.
Yeah,
like that's how we should be making these decisions.
Right.
I'll give something on the other end of the spectrum. Like, it is insane that 30 years after it was proposed, you can't take a high-speed train from San Francisco to LA and get there in 2.5 hours. That's insane.
Right.
Every other country in the world has done it.
Yeah.
But we can't. And all of a sudden, like the price tag, $150 billion, turns out that's not that much money if you realize that it's a good investment and you're gonna get it back in economic development.
Yeah.
That's the math that suddenly we're doing now. We're realizing, wow, this is a lot of government money, but it's necessary because of this crisis. We should be doing that math every day of the week in Congress, not wasting money, not spending money on things where you don't get a good return, but investing in our country, investing in our future, investing in things like infrastructure, modern infrastructure, and education. Those are just good investments to make.
Yeah. For anyone that has questions for Congressman Moulton, you can type them into the Q&A box now. I'm going to take them in just a minute or two. I wanted to ask you about this Save Organizations That Serve America Act. So act that you filed or you put in, I don't know what you call it.
We wrote the bill and introduced it.
You wrote the bill and introduced it. Thank you. And it's to give money to nonprofits, right?
That's right. So a lot of
What is it now?
nonprofits, yeah, nonprofits are obviously doing critical work all the time, but especially right now, and they're
Yeah.
seeing their revenue totally dry up. So like the Y, a few blocks down the street,
Yep.
gets a lot of revenue from gym memberships and people paying for childcare.
Yeah.
Totally gone. They also get a lot of money from donors. Everyone's
Yeah.
lost money in the stock market.
Yeah.
The big ticket donors aren't contributing.
Yeah.
At the same time, like we need their help more than ever. There are a lot of people who still need childcare. They're doing lunch service. They're doing all sorts of things
Yeah.
that they always do in the community. And they were kind of left out of this bill because there are technical reasons why they're not eligible for the funding in the bill that we just passed. It's one of the many issues with the bill. So I found a Republican who agreed with me on this. We introduced a bill that will get cash to nonprofits and will also just ease some of the restrictions on giving. For example, if this bill is passed, you'll be able to give to a nonprofit right now, and it will count as a deduction for your 2019
Oh,
taxes, not for
amazing.
next year. Immediate
Amazing.
benefit, gets money where it's needed most. We're hoping that this bill is basically just copy and pasted into the next relief package.
Okay, I only have two more questions. One is about what work was going to be focused on and get done during this period that now is by Congress, by the House, that is now not being worked on or not being done. That's my first question. Like, what were you
I
going
mean,
to be
there's so,
spending?
I don't think there's any like specific major category. There's a lot of appropriations bills. There's like like we have to pass the whole defense bill, for example.
Yeah.
Um, that has been delayed, but it's a lot of little things. Like for example, we are this close. We're this close to getting 988 to be the national mental health hotline, so that no one has to wake up in the middle of the night facing a mental health emergency or getting a call from a friend and have to try to find the national suicide hotline number,
Yeah.
which I mean, I can't even remember. And this is like one of my major issues, right? So just like if you wake up in the middle of the night and your house is burning down, you don't have to find a phone book to look up 911.
Right.
This will literally save lives as soon as it's passed.
Yeah.
We've gotten bipartisan support in both the House and the Senate. We even have someone at the White House who likes this and will probably get Trump to sign it, but we can't get it over the finish line right now because we're not in session. So
Mhm.
like this is an example of a piece of legislation that it's my bill, but like it will save lives the day it's passed. It's way bigger than just like being able to chalk up like, yeah, hey, we passed this legislation, but we can't get it done because Congress is out of session.
Got it. And then the last question is about the role of the Army. You were a Marine, you were a combat veteran, and where do you see the Army being utilized now? And how do you think it is best utilized, the armed forces, to assist in what is a national or international, in some cases, crisis?
Yeah, I mean, so we actually had a conference call with Department of Defense this afternoon, and they're doing a lot of work. Many of you have probably seen that the Comfort, the USNS Comfort, docked this week in New York City. There's another ship, the Mercy, going to LA. Across the country, the National Guard has been called up to help handle the crisis. They're literally building hospitals and supporting, community-based care, all this stuff. They're doing a lot of the military's flying a lot of supplies around. They're doing a lot of logistical support, and the guard and everybody else has said like, look, this is an appropriate role for us. Just in the same way that the National Guard often gets called out for like a hurricane or some other natural disaster.
Yeah.
But a lot of people have been saying, look, the military needs to do more. The military should be just sending all their active duty troops from overseas back home. And that's actually really not appropriate because we have this really important principle in American governance that the military is used for foreign conflicts. It's not used in a sort of like police state kind of method back here at home. And
Yeah.
I think that we can't lose our fundamental values. We certainly can't lose our Constitution, even in the midst of this pandemic. So I think the military is finding a pretty good balance right now.
Are you worried that the kind of melee that's happening in our country actually makes it more necessary that the military safeguard us, and not, are you worried about people trying to attack us during this time because our economy is weak and everything's shut down?
It's a really good question. I mean, yes, national security is always it's always critical, and everyone knows that around the globe knows that we're kind of on our knees right now as a country. You know, the one, I don't want to say is a virtue of this pandemic, but it is totally global, right? So our biggest adversaries, Russia and China, for example, like they are also really suffering from this virus.
Right.
But it's a readiness issue. You know, there's
Yeah.
a aircraft carrier right now that's having to go to port to take care of this major outbreak of coronavirus on ship, and that means that all of a sudden that aircraft carrier is out of the mix. They're not ready to fight,
Right.
and you know, deterrence matters. Making sure everybody is on their jobs, ready to rock if it's called upon.
Yeah.
That's important, and obviously that's a risk.
Okay, so we just have a comment and two questions. Byron wants to tell you that Seth, he's a current Army infantry officer. Wow, English. Here, who's worked with a former staffer of yours, Ruben Brenner, and he just wants to say thank you for the time to talk today. Your time to talk today. I can't speak English, Congressman. Damn. Byron says hello and thank you. Okay.
I'm really not that intimidating, Manny. You know that.
I'm scared. I'm nervous. Maxine has a question about, and it's a good question. It's basically, everyone was talking about how Medicare for all was impossible and it cost so much money. It would be never be able to be done. But it's been pointed out, and we've also mentioned it, that when the government feels like something is worthy enough, it can figure out a way to assemble the money. What do you say to that?
Look, I, like every Democrat I know, believes that everybody should have access to healthcare. I think the only debate that we have in the Democratic Party is just what's the best way to get there. And you know, the Medicare for All program would accomplish that. But Medicare was written in 1963. Like, I honestly think we can do better than that. And I think that having a little bit of competition in the system is a good thing. So
Yeah.
I prefer a model that's more like Germany, where you have a public option, which is of course what Obama wanted when he proposed Obamacare, but then the Congress took it out. You
Yeah.
have a public option. That means that anybody who wants government health care can get it, but you also still allow private competition. Now, a lot of people say if you do that, eventually the public option will probably win out, and it'll put a lot of these private healthcare plans out of business.
Yeah.
Fine. Like if it's
Yeah.
better, then that's great. But let's have that competition. I actually get single payer healthcare at the VA. I think I'm the only member of Congress who just made this commitment to keep going to the VA.
Yeah.
And look, it's like pretty mixed results. Some of it's really good, some of it's pretty bad, but the VA has no incentive to, like, they don't want me as a patient. They would be thrilled if I showed up the next day tomorrow and said, you know what, I don't need the VA anymore because I'm going to pay for my own healthcare, or I'm going to get it through my business.
Yeah.
And so that lack of competition actually, does affect the quality of care.
Yeah. Shalab wants to know if you think we should have uniform shelter-in-place rules for all states. In my city,
Yes.
yes.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, look, again, I'm not like a disease epidemiologist or viral whatever biologist, but like, I mean, we know that this virus basically lasts for 2 weeks. So if the president, like think about it, 3 weeks ago had said everybody is going to shelter in place in this entire country, and you cut down on transmission that dramatically, I mean, you could conceivably literally stop the virus in its tracks, and we actually could be going back to work. We could be going to church on Easter or whatever, like the president has said. So that's actually would have been possible if he had shown some leadership and asked people to do the tough thing, which is to shut everything down. If you shut everything down really comprehensively for a period of time, you can actually get back up and running more quickly. But we totally failed to do it.
Malik just wants to say that they got a chance to meet you at a Library of Congress event and wanted to say thank you for all your work. So Malik says thank you. Robert Schloss wants to know if the Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, will she support remote work and voting? Is that something that have you guys come up with procedures for that?
Well, I mean, I think she supports discussing it. She does not support remote voting. I mean, there are some issues with remote voting, like, not to get into all the details, but one of the only things that keeps us sort of functioning as a Congress is the fact that we have to come together in Washington. So you need to have provisions for remote voting in situations like this. But like we shouldn't have it across the board. And I agree with her on that. But you know what? Like I said earlier, I mean, if you think about it, when I asked my tech guy how many other offices are prepared to work remotely, and he literally says 0,
Yeah.
like I mean that's not a good position to be in as a Congress. So we've got a lot of work to do, and it's one of the reasons why I've been such an advocate for new and younger leaders to get into Congress. I support a ton through my Serve America organization. That was a huge part of taking back the House in 2018, and it's often these younger members who are kind of like, showing folks the ropes about how to work remotely. I mean, I can't tell you how many conference calls I've been on recently, where like some of my wonderful colleagues who maybe just aren't quite as tech savvy, they're just constantly clearing their throat and stuff because like they don't understand mute. And it's like, if
I
you don't
heard
understand
that
mute on the conference on a conference line, like how are we going to get you to like
I heard
remote
that
work
Steny
with?
Hoyer doesn't own a cell phone.
I'm not going to throw any member individually
I'm
under the
not
bus.
saying, I'm just saying, I heard Steny Hoyer does not own one. That's what I heard.
I can neither confirm nor
You
deny,
ever
but
call Steny Hoyer on his cell phone?
it if look, Steny's wonderful, and actually I went
I
to
know he's
leadership.
wonderful. He's
Let me tell
amazing.
you this. Let me tell you this in Steny's defense.
When was the last time you texted him?
I went to leadership 5 months ago and said, you got to take this seriously because Congress could literally be out of session. One member of the team just like totally dismissed me. Steny was the only one who said, okay, like we will. I'm gonna have a meeting with Nancy about this, and we're gonna sit down and talk about it. So he's at least listening. He called me the other day, and I got a call, and it was the way it always goes, which is Congressman Moulton, Mr. Hoyer would like to speak with you, and then
Yeah. Okay. Nick McCarthy, final question. What role would you, Congressman, imagine the armed forces playing in helping to maintain a safe shelter in place? So how does the Army, what role should the armed forces play?
Well, again, I don't think the active duty armed services should be doing anything because their job is not policing, and that's really important principle we have in America. But the National Guard could be out there just like they're out there in a hurricane, making sure that like if the road is closed, you really do follow that rule and you don't use the road. So there's a role for the National Guard. I'm very proud that one of our Serve America candidates in 2018, Representative Max Rose from Staten Island, New York, was just called up to duty in the National Guard. So he's going to be out there serving in New York City. And, that's the kind of role they should. What's that?
He was supposed to do one of these with me this week.
Well, he might not be able to do it, but
no, he reached out and said he can't because of
yeah.
Sir.
No, I mean, look, I mean, what a great story of civilian service and everything. And so he's getting out there and doing his duty, and that's the kind of role that the National Guard should have.
Well, Congressman, I really appreciate you taking this call in the evening in Massachusetts. The people of your district are lucky to have you representing them. You're so awesome. Kind. Oh, before we leave, though, I have to do this cute little thing. Okay. So because chat is disabled, this is the link if folks want to become a sponsor of Manny's. It's joinit.org/o/Manny's. We could really use your help. All of our small businesses, for the most part, are shut down in San Francisco, including my own. And so we're asking everyone who's tuning into these calls to please go to joinit.org/o/Manny's and become a sponsor. If you like today's conversation, you can tag us at Welcome to Manny's. Also, Congressman Moulton has a really quite colorful social media presence, so you can find him on social media at Seth Moulton. And thank you to Sam for being our operator, and thank you, Seth, to your staff. You have such great staff. You really do.
Yeah, I call them team, not staff, but that's we're one team, one fight.
You're so much.
Manny, yeah. Manny, you're awesome. Thanks for doing this. Thanks for keeping it up, and we can't wait to see you guys back in business. I'll be out there to visit.
Same. Good luck with the move.
Take care. Thank you.
Bye, Congress.